I think we had a lot of energy. It was very fresh. Led Zeppelin had just released their first LP, which was a big hit. And that type of music was the genre of the day. In the 70s, it was Led Zeppelin, Purple, Black Sabbath. And we were lucky to be there in the beginning. I think the forerunners of that were the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck. I think that was very important. He started the ball rolling. Eric Clapton with Free, fantastic band. And then we just kind of heavied it up a little bit more with the in rock, and it worked. So. Okay, well, it seemed in our time, which was like 1970, the biggest bands were Led Zeppelin, ourselves, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath. With, on the American side, there was Mountain, and Vanilla Fudge was fading out a little bit, unfortunately. Fantastic band. And it was, we were just taking over from in a way, from someone like Hendrix. Hendrix was a little bit more muted music, very, very musical, very bombastic, but and we kind of try to develop certain riffs that he had. You know, we did borrow from Hendrix a lot, and we took it from there. The Guinness Book of Records, they said that we were the loudest band in the world. Not really. The star thing, I was just happy to be in a band that was making some money, and we were good players, I thought, and I was happy to be in a band that I was playing with some good musicians. I don't think one ever thinks of oneself as a star. I never have. I think the most drastic way my life changed when Smoke on the Water came out and was a hit was that we toured so much. We must have toured probably 11 months in the year, and we had to make LPs at the same time. So I became sick with hepatitis, which is one of those diseases that you go down with if you don't look after yourself. It's impossible to look after yourself when you're touring that much. And then Ian Gillan came down with hepatitis. So it was going around. And unfortunately, we had to take a lot of time off, although fortunately, that helped us. Coming down with diseases was one way of getting a rest, because you have people like management that want to work you to death. And I see that happening with a lot of bands. Unfortunately, when musicians get together, it's done in a very innocent framework. You play your music and you think, oh, this would be nice to be heard on the radio, but then you have those ugly managers manipulating and taking advantage of that situation and making people sign contracts that they don't really understand, of which I did. You know, I signed a lot of contracts not knowing what the hell I was signing, which I've since regretted. But it's one of these things that I see happening to all the people around me all the time, especially young people. You know, if they're 21, 22 and they start to make it, you'll always have that proverbial manager there saying, sign this. It's like the Satan comes in. Part of the business, I suppose. I've never really thought about the mark that I've left on rock and roll by playing Smoke on the Water, basically just 4 notes. Deep Purple had so many other songs that were great songs that you never ever heard on the radio. And they always pick on the Smoke on the Water. So you take what you can get. You know, if that's the song they want to pick on and say it's wonderful, great, so be it. It's not one of my favorite songs, although it's not a bad song. I remember one particular incident. Ian Gillan and myself were two touchy characters. I think it's a long story, but some friends of mine who were in wheelchairs, they came backstage to have some food, which was in the dressing room of the main band, which is Purple. I always had my own dressing room just for the silence. I wanted, because the rest of the band used to talk a lot, you know, and have their friends there. I'd like to be alone. And these friends of mine said to me that they just wanted to partake of some food or something, and the food was taken away from them, and they were thrown out of the dressing room. So when I heard this, it's a long, convoluted story. I got a little bit upset, so I went into that dressing room and I took out the food that was meant for the band, and I brought it all into my dressing room, and then invited these people in their wheelchairs, and I said, help yourselves, this is what it's all about. Meanwhile, the band came off stage and there was no food for them after the show. I had it all in my dressing room, and they got a little bit upset with that. And then on the next date, which I think was Cleveland, Ian Gillan, my roadie went into their dressing room and took out some food, and he said, who's that for? And my roadie said, well, it's for Ritchie. So Ian got tomato sauce and put it all over my food. And then the roadie came into my dressing room and said, this is your food, but this is what Ian Gillan did to it. And he put tomato sauce all over whatever it was. So I took offense to that, went back in there and put it in his face, and proceeded not to fight. We became very close to fighting. He had no idea that I was upset about the way that my friends were treated in the dressing room the night before. He wasn't told about that. He was just told that, well, Ritchie was being very difficult and he took all your food out of the dressing room. So there was a misunderstanding. I don't even know why I started talking about that. I've never had a high point with Deep Purple. Great band, good musicians, but I've never felt that I've arrived. I've never felt that I was anything out of the ordinary. The fact that we could pay the bills at one point, to me, was great. But I've never felt that we did anything that was outstanding. I liked a lot of the songs. Child in Time was a great song. But I never felt that I had arrived, that I was a star, that I was anything other than, I'm just a musician who's very lucky and I can pay my bills.